think all our traditions are anchored in the idea of a second chance, another opportunity. For still too many of our young men and women in urban communities across America, they really never had a first chance.
We knew that if we got trained in it, then we can train others.
If you put the individual in a good situation, he'll thrive. The human being will thrive. And it's a shame that the individual that become incarcerated, he come home basically with no education. So if he come home with no education, that repeats the cycle.
To be a blessing to the family member of a convict is how Jesus was defining greatness. The stigma that is attached to the prisoner spills over to the family.
I think if we dealt a little bit more with forgiveness, we can see a society transformed.
Yes, I messed up, but forgive me for that. I want someone to look at my life and be able to say, okay, that's what I want now. To turn them from the life of crime and the life of going in prison, but now to show them different, that it's not like that,
Thank you, brother. God bless. I went into prison ministry thinking that the people I was dealing with were bad people and my job was to redeem them. God bless them. Only to find out after I got there, God bless you, that their job is to redeem me.
CBS presents Crime, Punishment, and Redemption. The narrator is Ted Holmes.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. Today, there are more than 2.3 million people behind bars, costing U.S. taxpayers more than $63 billion a year.
The impact that phenomenon has had on communities like the one that we're situated here has been very profound.
Rami Nashashibi is the executive director of EMAN, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, a grassroots social justice organization on Chicago's South Side.
These individuals are coming back in many cases to the same 3 or 4 zip codes and finding even fewer resources and options and opportunities than were available at the time of their incarceration, that in part led to their incarceration in the first place.
The reason that they got involved in crime, whatever it was survival.
Rafi Peterson is one of the founding members of EMAN.
We don't come from wealthy homes, so you don't have resources. And so if you go right back into the same environment where you came from, you may have changed the heart, but the people that you did wrong to, they haven't. They might still be in the game or they brothers, and they, like my case, I was convicted of murder. So I know that if I'm not doing what I was doing no more and I don't want to live that life, then I can't be in that environment no more.
In the state of Illinois, more than 50% of released prisoners return to prison in 3 years.
1 out of 2 formerly incarcerated individuals is going back to the system, costing more money to the state, in many ways disrupting those communities in which they're coming from and returning to even more profoundly.
For years, heavily armed gangs have created an atmosphere of violent crime on Chicago's South Side. And many of the houses in the neighborhood have been foreclosed on due to the national housing crisis and predatory lending.
In some cases, half the block were just vacated. Homes that then sat there, dilapidated, taken over by local gang entities that turned them into drug homes, crack homes, homes where prostitution and other types of things were being run out of.
Hey, how you doing, man?
EMAN created the Green Reentry Project. The organization buys foreclosed property and converts it into environmentally friendly housing for the formerly incarcerated. All the work is done by former prisoners, providing on-the-job training, a living wage.
This most recent Green Reentry building was one that we did through a multi-faith housing reclamation campaign that was led first and foremost by Iman and the Jewish Community of Urban Affairs, which targeted this building not only because it's on our block, but because it was the site of tremendous trauma in the community. We found a young woman that was sexually assaulted in the gangway in the middle of the afternoon across the street from a school that had 600 elementary kids in it at the time.
The acquisition of the property from the city of Chicago was a community effort.
The father from our local church, the priest known as Father Tony, who presides over a church that's immediately in front of the organization, the imam from the local masjid, the rabbi from the synagogue, stood in alliance with one another in front of the building. We, along with neighbors on the block, presented a kind of united front about our concern, and the judge was even struck by the number of times we came in front of them in this type of capacity. So when the brothers assumed their role on this project, they were immediately made aware of the history of what it took to acquire the building. And so they became part of that as well.
Oh, wow.
See it?
This has changed a lot.
Jacob Farmer was one of 6 men who worked on the house. He was released a year ago after serving 20 years.
I was raised in the penitentiary. Basically, I got locked up when I was 18, released when I was 38. So I became a man in the penitentiary. When I first came home, it was rough. Not knowing where money comes from, and you've been dependent so long inside the penitentiary. And when I got involved with the Green Reentry and the construction field, all that was new to me. They educated us in carpentry and plumbing, etc. What we did was basically beautify that area. We took control of it, and we beautified it. And I take pride in it.
We're really clear with them that it's not just about job training and development around the trade. It's really about leadership development. It's really about an opportunity to give men who are coming home from prison an opportunity to take a role that otherwise they simply would not have had, not just in a job where they're clocking in, clocking out.
The house was completed in April of this year. On hand at the official ribbon-cutting ceremony were faith leaders, local politicians, and the marching band from the elementary school across the street. Like nearly all the men who were part of Green Reentry, Jacob now has a full-time job.
Before I became incarcerated, it was basically tearing down the community. I took part in running the streets and doing different things in the streets. So, and now at this point in my life, it's all about restoring the community. We destroyed it. It's time for us to restore it at the same time. So, what the man has given me is the opportunity to basically fulfill that obligation that I have to the community, not just the community I come, but for all communities. What it has really done for me personally, it helped me get my humanity back. That's more valuable to me than any job, any financial assistance that they was providing for me. Just to help you get your humanity back, make your transition from that being incarcerated to being free. That's not an easy transition.
If America looked at guys coming home and judged them by what they do now, not what I did yesterday, because we all know and we've seen different things, Enron, or even the housing scandal. If everybody in America who had done wrong was convicted, half the people that walking around with the Brooks Brothers three-piece suits on in the nice attaché cases would be locked up.
This program is valuable. I can't express enough how valuable this program is. And this should be a model for prisoners coming home, or different aspects of the government that want to help prisoners to come home. So this has been a great, great, great thing.
We will return after these messages.
Father David T. Link is a Catholic priest and volunteer chaplain with the Indiana State Prison.
Most of the people in prison are good people who have made some terrible decisions. And given the right environment, they can be turned around.
Daniel, is your name?
I'm Father Dave.
God bless you.
The work has given him an inside look at the problems associated with mass incarceration.
That great statistic that the United States has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarceration. The word penitentiary, of course, comes from penance. And we thought, we've got to have these people do penance. No, we don't. We've got to have them find their own purpose in life. My brothers who are incarcerated, I call them the pinballs. They're shot out into this vicious machine. They don't know where they're going. They bounce from one thing to another. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a very bad thing. Sometimes they get caught in a hole and they lose some points, or they go to prison. They don't know what their purpose is. They don't know that they can make a difference in other people's lives, not only in their own life, but in their other people's lives. Everything's affected. Your job opportunities, voting, how people regard you, where you can live. It's unsustainable, both from a standpoint of human dignity and from a standpoint of economics. Take it either way.
What may come as a surprise is that Father Dave did not become a priest until the age of 71. He'd spent most of his life as a lawyer, professor, and dean of the University of Notre Dame Law School. In 1958, he married Barbara, his high school sweetheart, and together they raised 5 children. Giving back was a big part of their lives.
Barbara was an absolute superstar. I've often referred to Barbara as the Michael Jordan of spouses because everything she did, she played above the rim. I mean, she was the one that got me involved with the homeless. She got me involved with prison ministry because she was a person who had just a great feeling for her fellow men and women and passed that on to me.
It was Barbara who suggested he volunteer at the local prison.
I said, Barbara, I've spent my life training prosecutors to put people in prison. Now you want me to go over and talk to the people that are incarcerated? And she said, well, I think you'd enjoy it. I ended up in a room full of 65 people that were in for murder and no guard, just me and these lifers. And I am scared stiff. I got hooked. I loved these people. I had to come home and tell Barbara that, once again, she was right.
In 2003, his wife of 45 years passed away, but he continued his prison ministry work.
I started going every day because I needed to be needed. And I found that there were people in there that needed me. We've got to remember that the vast majority of people who are in prison did not fall into the cracks. They were born in the cracks. They came out of an almost impossible environment.
Gary Sparkman met Father Dave while serving time in prison. He never knew his own father, growing up in Chicago's South Side.
My mother was a single parent, raising me and my brother. And so with the help of my grandmother, my mother, did the best she could with us.
He joined a gang at an early age and started selling drugs.
I was what I call a money man. I was about making money. What we call styling and profiling, who can dress the best and drive the best car, And so in doing that, I got heavy involved in it.
At the age of 22, he was arrested and sentenced to 73 years in prison.
When you go to prison, no one is telling you, the misery and pain that you go through, and when you living in that 8x8 cell, when them walls start talking to you. And I've seen people hang themselves. I've seen people start cutting on themselves, to try to escape the misery and pain that life is now dealing to them.
Sparkman's sentence was eventually reduced to 10 years, but after violating the conditions of his parole, he returned to prison for 3 more years.
I learned that God was still polishing me. He had some things to still, clean up in me and stuff. One of the problems I had was anger management.
If we're going to cut the cycle of crime in the United States, it's got to begin with you.
Sparkman met Father Dave in an anger management class.
Learning that it's okay to be angry. but it's what you do with that anger. And understanding that I had a lot to lose by reacting to everything. I've saved myself a lot of time from going back.
This is my friend.
Yes, thank you, Doc.
Thank you, brother.
Love you.
Father Dave has been a good friend and mentor to him ever since.
We don't decide our purpose. We discover it. And so I'm trying to help them with their discovery. Theirs is not the same purpose as mine, but my purpose is to help them discover theirs.
Since Sparkman's release from prison in 2011, he's had a full-time job and plays an active role in the lives of his son and daughter.
You can rehabilitate yourself, or you can become a part of the system. Is what most guys go in there because they still want to join, keep with that clique and, you know, identify themselves, you know, and show this toughness, you know. But it's like I came to the realization and to the point that I didn't care. I no longer care what you think about me, you know, because this is my life. I have to live it.
The story of Father Dave's life and work was the focus of a book entitled Camarado, I Give You My Hand. Maura Poston Zagrans is the book's author.
I think it's a little easier to be compassionate towards someone who's like you. It stretches and challenges you to be compassionate towards someone who's very different from you, who had a very different childhood.
Today, she's an advocate for the formerly incarcerated.
Who among us has ever not made a mistake? Maybe some of us haven't been caught. To give a former felon a chance to prove himself or herself. Let them stand on their feet and prove to me who he is, who she is. If she's someone that I can trust, well, I'm ready to go forward with that person as a camarado.
Thanks.
When he isn't ministering to those behind the wall, Father Dave travels around the U.S. talking about why there is a need for criminal justice reform.
When you incarcerate a person, you have extended the cycle of crime. The rest of the family doesn't know anything but a life of crime, so the spouse, the children, they go into a life of crime. We get a whole new generation of people that are doing that. And we got to realize that this is not sustainable. The whole thing is collapsing. And even now, some of the worst of the lock them up and throw away the key kind of legislators are starting to say, yeah, this isn't working, is it? We need people from outside the razor wire to support those of us who are behind the razor wire.
We will return after these messages.
Love you, brother.
For families of the incarcerated, the stigma of having a family member in prison is difficult to overcome.
One of the challenges we have if we're going to really minister with those who are incarcerated and their families is we got to get over shame.
Dr. H. Dean Trulier is a Howard University professor and director of Healing Communities.
Pastor, my son got locked up, but don't tell anybody. What it is creating the space where it's safe to say, my son is locked up, my daughter is locked up, and I need help. Where's Jamal? I haven't seen Jamal in a while. Well, he's in the service. He's away at school. He's down south.
The Healing Communities Prison Ministry and Reentry Project starts with the congregation, breaking the stigma of incarceration from the pulpit.
Harold Dean Trulier, 1002648 George W. Hill Correctional Facility. I never forget my number. I'm not ashamed to say that because of my mistakes, I had to do time. And for those of you that know the language, I'm still on paper. I got to report to my PO on Thursday. But you got to say, I have to say that so that somebody else will be set free and you won't be shamed. People are surprised to know that this guy with the PhD who used to teach at Yale and go all the way down the line, you know, my testimonies from Yale to jail and back.
Usually in sacred places and sacred spaces, we put on this facade of success.
James H. Buck is the senior pastor of Berean Baptist Church in North Philadelphia.
Today is another day to get it right with Jesus. Amen.
His church adopted the Healing Communities model over 3 years ago.
The gospel that we preach is a gospel of redemption. The gospel that we preach is a gospel of reconciliation. There are some circumstances that we are not able to go back and correct, but we try to bring some sense of hope, some sense of justice, not only spiritually, but physically and psychologically, with helping persons to renew or have a transformative way of thinking about their situation.
If you can't deal with incarcerated folk, you got to get rid of the book of Jeremiah, because Jeremiah was in the hole until a prison ministry of 30 brothers came by and pled and got him out.
If we've done the work, starting right here in our pews on Sunday mornings, Monday through Saturday, right here in the church, then when folk come home, then they have someone who's going to walk with them through those challenging times. They have someone that's going to help them to really think differently about the choices that they have.
Thanks to the Reentry and Redemption Ministry, returning citizens and their families have someone to turn to. Virginia Knight is one of the founding members.
We've come up with the slogan, Temple Justice with Mercy, which means you don't judge a person because we don't know all the answers. We don't know the reasons why.
The group makes regular visits to area prisons.
They really look forward to us coming. It gives them a chance to speak, but also for us to listen to them as well. Because a lot of times it's just about they need someone to talk to that can give them an objective opinion without judging them, because we can't judge if we don't want to be judged.
One of the things we know is that inmates who get visits get better. Inmates who are visited by family members, by clergy, by friends, by siblings.
The Reentry Ministry also helps returning citizens find jobs and places to live.
When they come out, if they don't have any car fare, we pick them up. I'll take them to the program. I'll take them to the housing. I'll do what I have to do because it has to be done. And we have a phone number. Call us. You can always talk to us. If you can't talk to anybody else, you can talk to us.
Ernestine Seibert joined the ministry to be better informed. She's experienced the effect of prison on her extended family.
My oldest grandchild is 34, and he has 4 children. He was the one that was incarcerated. And their mother, she was incarcerated too. So, you know, I just want to break that cycle.
Carl Green served 10 years.
When you're taking away, they're taking away. You know, when you're doing a bid, believe it or not, your family, everyone in your family is doing that bid. You know, it hurts. It truly hurts.
If you got children, your children are going to follow your steps probably, because what they're going to say is, oh yeah, well daddy was in prison. Well, they're going to figure, oh, it's okay to be in prison. Now you have the father, the son, and now you have the cousin or the nephew. And that's because, well, if dad's in prison and nobody's really making a big stink out of it, I can go to prison too, and nobody can make a stink out of it either to me. And then everybody goes to prison. Then the problem is, when you come out, there's nothing for you. There's nowhere for you to go. You have to break that cycle.
People coming home from prison need a new set of values. There has to be some type of values change. So they have to be able to look at the world differently and make different kinds of decisions.
Studies show that the formerly incarcerated are less likely to return to prison if they can change how they think and who they hang out with.
But you got to want change. You have to, within yourself, be able to cut loose everyone that you was running with. Okay, break the cycle. The first day that I came out, went home, got out them clothes, got dressed, and went and found me a job. And been on that job ever since.
We in the church, we in the synagogue, we in the masjid have to work on the ground with people with their attitudes and values.
How you doing, man?
But we also have a responsibility to work for justice. So if we're going to change the system and deal with mass incarceration and changing policy issues and change the way in which we do policing and the way in which we do probation and the way in which we do sentencing, then we've got to connect people with those who have been impacted by those policies.
If we can take a few of us and build some sense of hope, then it becomes contagious. It becomes a spread across the whole community.
To view this program and others like it, go to cbsnews.com/religion and culture.